All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Training for Hiking live Q&A. My name is Rowan Smith, and today I'm answering your questions around training for hiking. Now, if you haven't come across one of these streams before, very simple. For anyone who may be watching this live, if you do have any particular questions around training for hiking, physical preparation for the trail, or anything like that, you can pop them into chat and I'll do my best to answer them. Beyond that, I've had a few questions that have been sent through prior to this, which I'm going to be talking through in a bit of detail and hopefully give you a bit of info. So what we're going to be covering today is we're going to be talking through multi-day hikes and what you can do to set yourself up for success. We're going to be talking through some tips around road walking, protecting your feet, and just having general success when we're doing long road walking trips. And we're going to talk a little bit about the strength stimulus as well, and making sure we don't get too confused in regards to our training, where we miss out on, getting the best development of our strength. So to start with, question number one, multi-day hikes setting up for success. Now, essentially, this question came through. The question was, I have a multi-day hike coming up. Are there any tips on how I can best rest up and prepare for success on the next day? And this is a really important subject because when it comes down to multi-day adventures, essentially what we do before and after our hikes can make or break success. Because realistically, for multi-day adventures, when we're looking at 3 or 4 or 5 or multi-week, whatever may adventures, what we tend to see is there's two different situations with our hiking. Number one, and this is best case scenario, is essentially we hike. The first few days tends to be relatively difficult. We hike and hike and hike. The body gets, plenty of stimulus. It's challenging. The body gets tired and this and that. But each night, as we rest up, as we recover, the body will just improve a little bit more, improve a little bit more, improve a little bit more. And this is what we know is getting our trail legs, where after a few days, we actually start feeling really good on the trail and we kind of get better and better and better as we go. Now, on the flip side of things, what can often happen is sometimes it can go the opposite direction, where we can go day after day after day. And instead of overnight, we actually feel like we're getting fresher and recovering and feeling stronger. We can actually go the other way. And the body can start getting more and more sore. The body can start sort of getting a little bit achy and it can go in the opposite direction. And this tends to either be leading people to have a really bad experience or tends to be people fall off the trail, which is not much fun. And a big portion of this comes down to our physical preparation in regards to if we have more fitness and more strength, we will definitely not use quite as much energy and we'll recover day to day quite a bit. However, on top of that, there are lots and lots of things you can be doing before and after your hiking, which can give you a bit of a boost, which can help you recover day after day, which can help you wake up, feel fresher, help you have more energy, and ultimately have more chance of falling into that situation where you get your trail legs and everything feels good. So to talk you through a few simple ideas around what we can look at here, I'm going to talk you through some ideas around end of day, which can help, and also start of day, which can help. Now, end of day, basically once you actually finish your hiking, once you're done, once you're in camp or whatever it may be, a few things we really want to think about. Number one is we want to rehydrate as soon as possible. Typically most hikers, when they're going through exercise, when they're going through hiking, we'll drink water, we'll, do our best, but a lot of people finish up the day being a bit dehydrated. It's not too uncommon, very simple. One thing that you can do just to help with your recovery is just make sure we rehydrate pretty quickly afterwards. So essentially, it's not a case of you getting to camp and drink leaves and leaves and leaves of water, but making sure we're on top of this. Really simple way to judge your hydration status, and this is a bit more practical when we're in camp as opposed to being, actually hiking, is looking at your urine color. So if you go take a pee, have a look at your urine. If it's clear to straw colored, you're looking pretty good. That means you're pretty much fully hydrated, you're happy days. If you do that and it's a little bit darker, then it's just a sign saying we want to drink a bit more water. We want to get a cup or two or what it may be, rehydrate as quickly as possible. The reason why we say it quickly as possible, not only will it help our recovery, but also we don't want to be just having huge amounts of water at the end of the night, just before you go to bed, because then that can obviously disrupt our sleep. So that's number one, rehydrate as quickly as possible. Number two is when we are looking at our dinner for that night. Fuel and what nutrition are doing will make a massive difference to your recovery. Typically, with dinners, we want to make sure we're having a nice holistic approach to our dinner. We want to make sure we have a mix of carbohydrates, a mix of fat, a mix of protein, getting all of that. Each of those will play a significant role in regards to what the body needs at the end of day of exercise. We may not want to have a huge amount of protein and fat when we're actually hiking because sometimes that can take a little bit longer to digest. But during our meals, we want to make sure we get that. So a mix of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So when you're doing your meal planning, just making sure you're looking at that. On top of that, make sure you eat your dinner. What I mean by that is a lot of people will get to the end of the day and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I've just got no appetite. And they just neglect their dinner, they skip it, or whatever it may be. That is really, really not a great thing because we need our food in to refuel, to help our recovery. Make sure we eat our dinner. Really, really, really make sure you get in there. One thing you can look at is if you are the type of person where you're like, you know what, I do have a tendency to get to the end of the day hiking. I don't have any energy. I don't have any appetite. I just feel gross and I can't typically eat dinner 50% of the time. And then in this situation, you may need to action plan around that and think about, okay, if I cannot stomach a full dinner, what are some backup options which I can go to, which can get there? What are my backup options, which maybe I can still get some carbs in? Maybe some chocolate or some sweets or just stuff that will digest quite easily. What is something with a bit of protein which I may be able to force down? Is there like some protein powder you can bring, which you just have in a shake form or whatever it may be? There's a few things you can kind of think about there, but making sure your dinner has carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Pretty simple. Now, the next thing to think about is, if you are having a big break between your end of hiking and dinner, so for example, if you're finishing up your day hiking at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, but you're not going to have your dinner for another couple of hours or whatever it may be, probably worthwhile getting a decent snack in pretty quickly. So getting something with carbs and protein in pretty much once you're done. When you're putting up camp, get that in there so you can get that sort of, process started for recovery. So nutrition, they're very, very simple things, but they can make a pretty big difference. Now, coming up, the next thing you can think about is okay, an end of day routine, fitting in a little bit of like recovery work, specifically a little bit of stretching, a little bit of like self massage can go a long way. Now, the idea behind these things is they can, number one, if you've got sore muscles at the end of the day, this can relieve a little bit of soreness, help us feel a bit more comfortable. Number two, it can help us just chill out at the end of the day and just help stimulate our kind of recovery pathways and help us feel a little bit better. And number three can just help us sleep a little bit better, which is obviously great for recovery as well. So you don't have to get too complicated with stretching or rolling. With stretching, you can really just stretch any particular muscles. With rolling, you're probably not going to be carrying a foam roller on the trail, but you could use like a trekking pole, you could use a water bottle, you could use I like cork massage balls. Um, if you've never seen them before, they're kind of like this, where it's just like a massage ball, very, very, very light. You keep it in your pack, you can do a little bit of massage there. With this type of stuff, you can either take the approach of just sort of working 5, 10 minutes on muscles that are a little bit sore, a little bit tired. That can be good. Or you can come up with a particular routine where you're like every single day at the end of the day, I'm going to spend 10 minutes to do this routine, work through it all. To give you a few ideas on this, I'm going to share a little article for you. Fair warning, anyone watching live, the screen's about to go white, so bear with me for the changing thing. But I'm going to show you this article here. It just basically talks through stretches before and after hiking. Just gives you a few simple ideas what you can do as a warm up, which we'll get into in a moment, but what you can do at kind of the end of the day as well, in regards to just helping things relieve, helping things feel a little bit more comfortable, and just give you a few options. This is an exhaustive list, but it just does give you a few things you can try. I'll pop it in a chat so you can go and check that out. So yeah, fitting a little bit of recovery. And then the next thing we kind of want to think about when it comes down to this is helping us sleep, because sleep plays a massive role in recovery. And obviously, when it comes down to hiking, sleep is often a bit of a tricky thing. First and foremost, make sure you have sleep systems which you are comfortable with. Make sure you have tested out your sleep systems and use them before you go out on the trail and make sure that they actually work for you. And that is obviously very, very important. But beyond that, a couple of other things you can do. Typically, two things that disrupt sleep when it comes down to uh, comes down to sleep is sore muscles. So we get to the end of the day and we get into bed and we're like, oh my gosh, my legs are really achy, or this is really sore, or we get cramps, or whatever it may be. Um, to help with that, the above tips, stretching and rolling, can definitely go a long way, and just helping relieve those sore muscles. Maybe even looking at like magnesium as well. So magnesium is typically like a muscle relaxant, can be quite nice, help things chill out, can be quite nice for sleep as well. So that may be something you want to look into. Whether you get some like just magnesium capsules and use that, or you can get some spray on magnesium. If you get like a little bottle which that kind of sprays on, can be quite nice, or whatever it may be. But that can be quite nice. As with anything, if you are getting magnesium capsules, test them out at home. Make sure the body responds to it okay before you do anything. And then on top of that, another thing that often people don't really consider is sometimes we get to the end of the day, we lie in bed, We are physically knackered and tired, but sometimes we can just be mentally wired. Our brain can be going a million miles a minute, can be a little bit tricky and stop us falling asleep. So just have a think about what can you do as an end of day thing, which can help actually calm the mind down a little bit and help. Stretching and rolling will probably help a little bit to that respect, but other things you can look at, journaling. A lot of people may not consider it, but bringing a pen and paper with you um, on the trail can sometimes be nice. I always bring it, and I always just do a little bit of journaling at the end of the day. While there's light still available, obviously, that can sometimes be enough just to clear my head and can be quite nice. Or you could just do something like deep breathing. And when you're in bed, if you do feel a bit wired, just have a little routine where you do a bit of deep breathing. Maybe doing box breathing, like 4 seconds breathing in, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. And literally just repeat that again and again and again can sometimes be nice to help us sort of chill out a little bit. And that can be pretty good. On top of that, just following up on sleep is, maybe consider if you're comfortable with this and whatever it may be, earplugs and an eye mask can often go a long way, or really anything else that can sleep better. There's some really, really simple things you can do. It's probably stuff most people have already heard before, but if you do that each day and make sure you're on top of all of these things, it can often go a long way. Now, beyond that, that's our end of day. When we're kind of coming in the flip side of things, there are a few things you can do at the start of the day, which can be quite useful here. Start of the day, typically what I recommend is trying to pack up early if you're out with a friend or a group. There's a few things you can do as a start of day routine, which can be great. But what tends to happen is if we don't plan this, sometimes we will not pack up early. Our friend will pack up, we're stretching, we feel really self-conscious, we feel really awkward, we get in a hurry, we skip through this, don't actually end up doing it. So if you are planning on doing things at the start of the day to help set you up for the day, just get packed up before everyone else. Get it done, get it sorted so you don't have that tendency to rush or whatever it may be. Then two really, really simple things you can look at. Number one, make sure you're prepped for the day, snacks and electrolytes. Snacking can make or break a day of hiking and a multi-day hiking. Make sure whatever snacking you're planning on using for the day, whatever food you're planning, they're easily accessible. Meaning get some in your hip belt so you can actually get to them. Make sure they're accessible in your pack. Anything you need to dig around with, have that prepared so you don't have to faff around during the day. Electrolytes, if you're planning on having electrolytes, which I typically recommend for most hikers, I typically recommend making them up at the start of the day. So when you're in camp, get a water bottle, just make up however many servings of electrolytes you're planning on having, and then sip that through the day. The reason I say that, because sometimes we sort of say, hey, I'll make some up now, then I'll make some up for lunch, or I don't need them in the morning, I'll make them up in the afternoon. But then we get distracted, or maybe the weather changes, or we're in a rush, or whatever it may be, and we don't end up using it. So make it up at the start of the day, just get that all done. And then fitting in a short warm up in the morning can sometimes be good. You don't have to spend a huge amount of time here, but if we are packed up early, if we can fit in 5 minutes of this, can go a long way. You can either just roll some sore muscles. If you wake up and your feet are sore, or your calves are sore, or your quads are sore, spend a bit of time rolling with your water bottle or your trekking pole or that massage ball if you have one. Or just stretch out some key muscles, stretch out the ankles, stretch out the hips, make sure there's a little bit of range of motion. Even spending like 5 minutes of that each day can just be a nice way just to get everything set up and get you going. Again, for ideas on that, that best stretches for hikers, that talks to a few ideas there, but it can kind of and give you a few ideas. So when we're looking at multi-day hikes, a lot of that stuff is probably stuff you already know or already heard different bits and pieces. But if you can tick off each of these things and be pretty diligent with it and go in with a pre-plan, saying I'm going to be aware of my rehydration, I'm going to make sure my dinners are sorted, I'm going to make sure there's a snack, make sure I fit this in, and do it each day you're on the trail, it can often make all the difference. It just give you that chance of tipping over that edge, of recovering enough to feel better and better and better each day, as opposed to going the other way. So hope that answers the question. Hope that gives a few ideas, and we definitely go down that route. So, as we're going through, for anyone who is watching live, if you did have any particular questions you want to cover, feel free to plug them in the chat. I'm happy to cover. Now, next question that I got sent through was talking about road walking. And essentially the question was, I'm training for a 900-kilometre sponsored walk across New South Wales and South Australia, and was wondering if anyone has any experience road walking this kind of distance that I can get advice from. The main problem currently is sore feet and trying to slow myself down as I walk too fast, I think. And this is a really, 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 really common thing. When we're looking at these big, long walks, when we're looking at these big, long road walks, feed issues is probably the number one issue. And there's a lot of things that kind of goes into helping protect that and sort that and make sure it doesn't get uncomfortable. And then one of the triggers for feet can often be walking too fast. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to share a video. I do have a video that talks through foot pain in a bit of detail, and I want to share that in chat just so, because I'm not going to be covering it in this call, but it talks through some just general principles around foot pain, which is definitely not. But when we're specifically thinking, okay, being a little bit too quick on the surface roads and sustaining that for long periods of time puts a bit of extra. And if that's something I kind of want to consider and slow myself down, what are some pieces of advice? Well, a few things you can kind of look into. When we're on this paved surface, it can be really hard to hold ourselves back. It can be really hard to sort of pull back our pace because naturally we may just want to quickly walk. If you do really, really struggle with this and you're aware that certain sections are just struggle, one thing that can be quite useful, it may not be practical to do all day, it may not be practical to do every day, it may not be practical, whatever it may be, but if you're in certain sections that need to slow down, is using some slower paced music. Basically just having like, some type of MP3 player which has good battery life or some type of music device where you can say, you know what, my feet are getting sore. I know I need to slow down. Maybe just have a little playlist of very slow, casual music, which can actually naturally just slow us down. Listen to that for half an hour, which will pull us back a little bit. That may be enough just to kind of pull the feet back, give it the space it wants or whatever. This is a strategy I use for a lot of hikers on the opposite end of the spectrum who are intentionally trying to push a bit quicker, and we naturally get them going a bit quicker with quicker music. It can work the same way. So that can sometimes work. It may not be 100% practical all the time, but little doses of it can often work. Now, another thing that probably is a bit more practical when it comes down to this is looking at extra rest. So we may not naturally be able to slow us down or ourselves down all the time. We may just naturally keep on falling into quicker and quicker walking. But one thing we can control is just rest. In the sense that a lot of hikers, when they're doing these things, and any hikers in general, a lot of hikers tend to hike and hike and hike and walk and walk and walk until they really feel like they really need a rest. When they're tired, when they're dragging their legs or whatever it may be. And that's perfectly fine. But one thing that can be effective for pulling us back a little bit, saving the feet, and just saving our energy in general is just resting a little bit more than we may naturally feel like we need. So having a pre-planned rest schedule where you say, you know what, I'm not just going to hike for hours and hours on end, but every hour I'm going to have a 5 minute rest, or every 2 hours I'm going to have a 10-minute rest, or every 3 hours I'm going to have a 30-minute rest, or something like that. That can be quite useful. And you can literally just set yourself the target that I am going to rest, even if I don't feel like I need it, and that can sometimes be enough. And just breaking things up a little bit like that can really be useful for the feet in regards to pulling things back and helping them feel a bit more comfortable. Um, some days you really may not feel like you need it, but it's a whole case of kind of resting before you need it. And that can often go a long, long way. Another piece of advice that can sometimes work here is when we're doing lots and lots of road walking. Obviously, we're going to be on the same terrain for long periods of time. For the feet specifically, this can be a little bit tricky because you just do the same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing over kilometer, 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 day after day after day. So one thing you can look for, again, it may not always be realistic, but where you can look for is just take opportunities to break up terrain. If you do get to the stage where you're like, hey, I'm walking along and actually there is a section where I can actually be off the road or I can be off the footpath and there's some grass or there's some gravel or there's something that's a little bit different, take that opportunity to even do 10 minutes of that can actually go a long way. Take the opportunity to vary up the terrain just a little bit. Again, it may not always be practical, but just setting yourself that task can go a long way. And then finally, on the feet specifically, self-care, stretching and rolling at the start of the day can quite be useful. So just doing bits and pieces at the start of the day to give the feet a little bit of love, and at the end of the day to give the feet a little bit of love, similar to what I was talking about before, can really, really help, be useful. So at the start of the day, doing a bit of self-massage on the feet, literally just getting the thumbs into your feet and doing 2 minutes of just working over sore bits before you get moving can be really nice. Or again, you can use one of these cork massage balls, keep that in your pack, do 2 minutes of working on the feet as well. Working on the calves, even though the calves aren't the feet specifically, loosen them up, helping them feel a bit more comfortable, can just definitely be very, very useful for the feet. So none of that is really rocket science, but it is some sort of stuff that can make a bit of a difference. Controlling the pace, through music or whatever it may be, can be useful. Extra rest than you typically feel like you need, definitely useful. Breaking up terrain where you can, and then just doing a bit of self-care specifically, can definitely add into it. Not rocket science, can definitely help. Now, beyond that, when we are looking at if there's any just a few extra pieces of advice, when it comes down to this type of thing, when we're doing day after day after day, definitely make sure you have that end of day and start of day routine. So literally what I said on this multi-day thing, exactly the same. Rehydration, dinner, this, and this, all of that stuff is going to be useful to get you through day after day and making sure you're bouncing back and recovering and feeling good. On top of that, in Australia, New South Wales to South Australia, I would assume you're doing some pretty hot temperatures. So making sure you are on top of your electrolytes as well. You know what you're doing there. You're regularly using electrolytes and helping you through. And then fueling. Fueling can make or break any type of long distance adventure or long distance hike. So making sure you are regularly snacking, regularly topping up your energy stores, making sure you're not just eating when you feel like, but you have a plan there. Definitely get into that. If you're not aware of how to go about that, I do have some videos and some podcasts that talk about like specific ideas around that I can share, but just making sure we are regularly snacking in between meals. We're getting plenty of carbohydrates in between meals. That can go a long way. And same thing with the hydration. So not rocket science there, but definitely a few bits and pieces which can definitely make a bit of a difference. All right. And then the last question I kind of had sent through today, and if anyone does have any follow up questions off that, please let me know. Happy to sort of go into anything else. And then the last question I had sent through to me prior to this, which I'm gonna sort of cover, is talking about a strength stimulus. And this is a question I got sent through by a mountaineer the other day, and they were sort of talking about some specific stuff, very very relevant for my hiking community as well. So I want to cover it. And basically, the question was, is it possible to train strength and aerobic base simultaneously? So essentially, this person says, I have aerobic deficiency. And what that means, if anyone's worrying, is just someone whose aerobic energy system isn't quite as developed as it could be. And our aerobic energy system is our energy system, which provides energy for long periods of time at low intensity, which is the number one most crucial aspect of fitness for hikers. So they said, I have aerobic deficiency, so I'm doing lots of zone 2 training. That's my priority. And they were curious if they put on a heavy pack and went out and climbed some pretty steep inclines that did it at a pace which kept in zone 2, which is our aerobic zone, would that kind of accomplish both? And this is a relatively common question I get from people in the sense that a lot of hikers, a lot of mountaineers out there, they are aware that strength training can be beneficial, or at least a lot of people who follow me are aware that strength training is beneficial. But a lot of people are just not particularly massive fans of that type of training. They would much prefer to be out there in the hills, carrying a pack, outdoors, having a good time. So I quite often get asked, is it possible to kind of combine these two things? But realistically, when it comes down to this, in theory, it makes sense. In theory, it sounds good, but 99% of the time, mixing your cardio sessions and your strength work doesn't really tend to work out very well. Just purely for the fact that they are very, very, very different aspects of fitness. They're very, very different stimuli. They need very, very different stimulus to kind of improve them, and it doesn't tend to work out well. So I kind of put that in a bit of context to explain a little bit. When we're looking at strength training, one of the main roles of strength training is to develop our strength. It's in the name. Typically, when we're looking at strength training, the typical strength stimulus that someone would say, if you really want to improve strength, is you want to be doing sort of sets of 3 to 10 repetitions of an exercise. So what that means is you would choose an exercise, let's say a squat, for example, and you would choose a weight which, after let's sort of say 5 repetitions, you would do 5 repetitions, then you wouldn't be able to do any more. You would need a rest. You'd sort of hit that muscular failure, then you need a rest. Or you do 8, or you do 10, and then need that rest. Typically, strength, we are going anywhere from 3 to 10 repetitions of an exercise. That's all we're looking at. Now, if we're looking at a traditional rep, and let's use a squat for an example, each repetition will take a certain amount of time. In a squat, we could sort of say, hey, every single repetition I do is 1 second on the hard portion where I'm pushing up. Each repetition is going to take maybe about 4 seconds on the lower end portion. So each repetition I do will take maybe about 5 seconds per rep. And if we look at a set of anywhere from 3 to 10 reps, this means each set will take about 15 to 50 seconds before you need a rest. If we're timing that out, that's typically what we do. So we're trying to find a resistance, a stimulus, a challenge, which we will need a rest before we do it again. That's typically what we're looking for strength. And yeah, you can definitely build strength anywhere from like 10 to 20 reps doing high repetition stuff. But this is kind of like the more traditional approach to strength, which most people talk about. Now, if we go back to our heavy pack hiking, even if we're going out with steep inclines with a really, 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 really heavy pack, typically we're going to be doing step after step after step, probably hundreds of steps at a time. We're not going to be getting tired after 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. We're probably going to be going for quite a while. And even though you're going super, 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 super heavy with your pack, probably going to be quite a while. So you can see there's a bit of a difference between, say, 50 seconds of stimulus before we need a rest and potentially 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. They're very, very different things. It doesn't really line up. Like when it comes down to this type of stuff, heavy pack work can definitely be great for hikers, and I'm not saying it's not great, but it typically lines into cardio stimulus because we're going for long periods of time, and it will probably train our muscular endurance, so the ability of your muscles to produce a moderate amount of force again and again and again and again and again. But it probably won't quite line up what we want for strength specifically. So if you are a hiker who is trying to get the best benefits out of your training and get the best benefits out of developing your strength, the best benefits of developing your endurance, the best benefits of developing your aerobic fitness, we probably want to separate them. Strength training for strength development, cardio for cardio development. You may get a bit of endurance from your cardio as well, but kind of, work through things there. I know that was a little bit technical going to timing and that. Sometimes it can make people go a little bit cross-eyed, but hopefully that makes sense. Now, final thing I'll sort of say to this, some people may come into this and be like, all right, Rowan, but like, can't you do endurance work and get strength and whatever it may be and like this and that? And yeah, in all honesty, people who don't do a huge amount of strength development have never really explored this. If you do any type of extra resistance, like if you just do some higher repetition strength training, or if you do some of that pack work, if you're very, very on the lower end of the spectrum, you probably will get a bit of benefit for your strength from any type of resistance, but it probably isn't something we want to rely on long term. It won't last for a huge amount of time, this and that. So long answer short, if you're trying to get strong, do a bit of strength training. If you're trying to do cardio, do some cardio, but try not to cross below the lines too much between them because you may end up just missing out on one of them, which doesn't end up being great. The same thing when it comes down to getting a cardio stimulus with your strength training. Yes, you will get, if you do like a set of 10 repetitions and you get really, really high heart rate, you get really hyped up after 50 seconds, yeah, you will get a bit of a cardio stimulus, but it's definitely not going to be anywhere near hiking, hiking, hiking for hours and hours and minutes and minutes. So, splitting the two, not amazing. So, with that being said, hopefully that all makes sense. Those are the questions I kind of had sent through to me prior to this. And if anyone didn't have any more live questions, then I may just wrap things up from there. Last thing I will sort of say off all of this, if anyone does have any follow-up questions from any of this stuff, if anything did make sense or you kind of want me to expand on anything, please do let me know. And then anyone who is interested in getting questions answered in the future, feel free to reach out, click me a message, send me an email, let me know. Happy to pop them in. But all in all, I really do hope that people can get a bit of information out this. Hope it's useful. Yeah, have a lovely day to everyone watching, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.